All right, at least a couple people in here have run into errors, and I want to make sure you do understand what I'm talking about here. That when there's basically about 3 different places, okay, when you start looking in here and you start looking at some of the files that are in here, they have this on the top. See this? Remember, if it's a strongly typed view, that it's got @model, Contoso, etc. See that? Mine says Contoso CF because I went and redid mine, and I redid it as a just CF for CodeFirst. All right. Now, if you come into here and you go out and you find, for example, under App Start, and you go under Route Config, if this were to say ContosoUniversity, you're going to have a problem when you try to run this because you've got a mismatch of namespaces. And sometimes you can go in and just manually change it. Most of the time you cannot. All right? Since it was my screw up and not yours yesterday, what I will do is when I get done lecturing today, I will do 2 things. First, I will take my copy of the project because I'm going to have you modify this. You're doing this on your own. But I will give you my copy, which hopefully will be working. All right? And I will give you that, and then just in case you have to manually go in and add the records, all right, I'll give you this file too. But you're going to be going in and adding quite a bit that's not on this handout. All right? So again, like I said, I apologize for that. I screwed up. I'm not making any excuses. I screwed up. All right? Wasn't the first time, bless you, and it won't be the last time. All right, so when we continue on in here, updating the delete page. All right? We're going to have to make changes here for the delete in the controller, both in the get and in the post. So this is the first time we're making changes in 2 different areas. So the author says in the controller, the template code for the get uses the find method to retrieve the selected entity. It says, as you saw in the detail and edit methods. However, we want to implement a custom error message when the call to save changes fails. So we're going to add, again, we're going to add code to both the student controller HTTP get delete and to the student controller HTTP post delete. All right? So as it says, as you saw for update and create, deletes require 2 methods. All right? It says the method that is called in response to the get displays the view. If the user approves it, so in other words, if yes, I do want to remove that record, then the post is created. Again, I'm sorry if I keep sounding like a broken record. Does everybody understand in an ASP.NET application the difference between what happens when you do a get and what happens when you do a post? Get typically is going to bring up a form. If you act on that by saying, yes, I want to create, yes, I want to delete, or yes, I want to edit, then the post is created. All right? So the author says, we'll add a try-catch block here to the post-delete method to handle any errors that might occur when the database is updated. If an error occurs, it's going to call the get attribute delete method. This is new. Look on the screen. The post is calling the get. Why would the post call the get? Because in the get, we're putting in our own error message, not the one that would come up by default. All right? And that's what the author is saying. So this is what we're going to put in just a minute in the get. But when you look in the post, all right, we're redirecting, but we're basically redirecting back to the get. All right? So I'm going to grab this, which is, again, the delete, the get part of the delete. Double check and make sure. Yep. The delete get in the controller. So I can stop the run here. I want to go back. I don't want that. I want to find in my controller. Close a few things that are open here. All right. So I want to go in and I want to find in my delete. And I want to find in the delete method, but in my get delete method. So this is what's there now. All right. I'm going to, again, just comment that out and put in this. So again, look at what changes. Okay. Int question mark ID. Bool question mark. Okay. Notice what it says. Bool question mark. Save changes error equal false. So there's two different things to realize about that. Number one, you may not get nothing. You may not get nothing. You may not get anything there. The bool question mark says that it's optional. And if you don't get anything, this is a default value. It defaults to false, meaning you won't show that custom error. So it will only show that custom error when we go to this, and in here we set it. All right? So we just set the get for the delete. Now we're going to replace the post for the delete. So, and again, log the error. And we're redirecting them back to the get routine. Now, is that done often? I think the author, I'm not sure, I didn't write this, but I think the author did that to show that indeed it can be done. All right. And he talks about in the rest of this here, he says, there's other ways they could write this. I believe that this example is written, you may or may not agree with this, but it's written to try to be intuitive. In other words, even if you don't have a lot of experience, you can do this. All right? And I'm going to recommend, all right, everybody hears this, I am going to recommend that when you are upgrading your electronic portfolio, all right, that when you include the stuff from this class, I'm going to recommend that what I'm giving you for an assignment on this, which will be an extended CodeFirst, you put that in there, you put the sports store in there, and the one we're going to do as a class. You are getting to the point now, all right, that you should be putting in complete projects, and they shouldn't be piddly projects. In other words, they should be things of some merit. All right, because hopefully, 4 or 5 months from now, you're going to be starting to send out resumes. I know that Evan, who graduated last May, and Devin here, he knows Evan pretty well. He had like 4 interviews before he graduated. All right. Then the author says here in the delete.cs HTML, add an error message between the H2 and the H3 headings that are here. So we'll add this. All right. That's going to make sure that that error message shows. All right. So I'm going to grab just that one line of code, go to my delete.cs HTML file, find my H2 and H3 headings, which are right here. All right, and I'm going to paste that in. All right. And it says run the page by starting the program. Click the delete hyperlink. Choose delete on the page that says, are you sure you want to delete this? It says the index page displays without the deleted students. Right. It's pretty much exactly what you'd expect to have happen. If you want to do that, I'd recommend that you put yourself in there as a student, then just remove yourself. All right? All right, the last thing in this section, again, we talked a little bit about it. Let's just finish this up. To close database connections and free up resources they hold as soon as possible. All right? I remember years ago when I was working for the telephone company, there was a guy who went and opened up a database that I needed to work with. He opened it up, then he went to lunch. No one could find him. Wasn't really back in the days when we had cell phones. So we were looking all over the place because this guy was the only guy, his machine was locked, and he was the only one who could close it. I was afraid to go and call IT and have them close it because he was working on something where he was changing that database, and I didn't know what he'd done and what he hadn't done. But he got himself into trouble for doing that. So what I'm telling you is it's not that important a thing for us, but if we had one copy of this database, all right, you'd want to make sure that if you open it up to make changes, be they edits, creations, or deletions, you get in and you get out. And that's what they're talking about. All right? So that's why it says it provides this dispose method. All right? The base controller already implements an iDisposable interface, so this code adds a thing over it. It's going to make sure if you don't need it anymore, it's going to get rid of it. All right? All right. Next, I'm jumping ahead. Please look on the screen here. Sorting, filtering, and paging. That's the idea. So we finished this first one here. Jumping up to the second one. All right? And that's my hope, is that we can get through this, and then I can start talking just for a little bit about the command interpretation and the connection resiliency. All right? If you've got a database that's of any size and you don't provide capabilities like sorting, like filtering, like paging, even if you've got the best written thing you can think of, if your interface looks bad, that's what you'll be remembered for. All right? I had mentioned to you, I think I told you about this last week, how I had gone in for a job interview, and instead of putting $30,000 down as what I was making, I put $300,000, and all of them had seen it. The point about that, though, is this. I actually had a really good interview, but that's not why I was remembered. I was remembered for my screw-up, not for the fact that I had a good interview. And no, I didn't get offered the job. Is that why? I'll never know. All right? So we're going to add column sort links. We're going to add a search box. We're going to add paging. Now, please look at this. It says create an about page. What I am going to do, when you come in here, because I'm probably not going to have time to finish it today, but you'll get it. I'll either email it to you tonight or tomorrow morning. And that'll be your assignment, how I want you to extend this program. Everybody will have a copy of mine if you want it, and if you don't, just pass it along to the next person. All right, by the end of the period today. But I'm going to give you time tomorrow and Thursday, all right, to work on this. I'm not going to make it due till Monday. All right, but this is going to be your assignment for this part. All right. And then on Friday, what I'd like to do is, I think we can do it in one period, is go over the database first as opposed to the code first. All right, then what we'll do is next week, starting on Monday, Chapter 7. All right? Okay, so it says in the last tutorial we did CRUD, basic CRUD, create, read, update, and delete. All right, we also created a simple grouping page. You saw that again, where for the students, you had their information, all right, on the details page. Then below that on the details page, you had the courses they took and the grades they received. So the following image shows what your page will look like when it's done. So again, if you look up on the screen here, what's new? Pretty obvious right there what's new, right? We have right now, we've got create new, but now we've got to find by name. That's a filtering that we're going to be using. You always have your choice. If this is a products table, right there, if that's a products table, and let's say that's the product name, and then let's say that that's the product description, all right? Quite often when you do that and you provide filtering, you might want to let them filter by product, or you might want to let them filter by, something, a product description, or both. Again, look on the screen here. Do you agree? This right here, where you've got find by name, instead of this being find by name, this could be right here, instead of this saying find by name, this could be a drop down where we had find by name, find by last name, find by first name, as an example. All right, so there's a lot of ways that this can be done. The other thing too is if you look in here again, we're going to have pagination. All right, and you may or may not be able to tell, but I believe at least they've used some Bootstrap classes to add the pagination. If you don't do that, by default, it's going to look like this. Which doesn't look very nice. All right, in other words, if you've got 3 pages, you'll still have pagination, but they just added a couple simple Bootstrap classes to make it look a little nicer. All right. So, it says in the controller, we want to replace the index method with the following code. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this code because it's all over the place, for lack of better words. I'm going to grab it and I'm going to throw it into here just so you can see it. All right. Now, may or may not make any sense, but I do want to go over it anyway. Okay. All right. Name sort, date sort. All right. The point is this: when you look at it, it's going to say, do you want it? If it's already in ascending order, put it in descending order. Otherwise, leave it the way it is. Does that make sense? All right, so it's going to provide either one. All right. Then in here, this is the fields that you can sort on. All right, the name, which is the last name, the date, which is the enrollment date. And notice with enrollment, I guess maybe it's just enrollment. We'll find out in a minute. You can do it in ascending or descending order. All right. Notice that by default, again, you know how to write a switch statement. You really should always have a default in there, which just says display it the normal way, so to speak. If you don't want it by last name, like they show right there, you could, by default, you could just display it by ID number or something else. All right. Then you return it. So there's not much in there, but yet there's enough in there. So I'm going to come back here. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go back into my controller, find the index, which always should be near the top. There it is. And right now, as you can see, not doing too much. And we're pasting that in. All right. Again, if you don't like my description, there's the authors. Okay? Oh, I got a blank page there, but I did. The first time the index page is requested, there's no query string. The students are displayed in ascending order by last name. That means the default is getting hit. When the user clicks a column heading, the appropriate sort order is going to be provided. Notice what they're using to hold these. They're using the view bank. Why? Again, if you are writing a routine and you need a simple little variable that you want to use in a routine, you can use the view bank. Okay? And if you create it in one routine, it can be used in another routine without having to pass it. All right. Am I right in assuming everybody remembers the question mark colon operator, the ternary operator? If true, do this. If false, do that. All right. And they talk about the different ways that you can do this. All right. It says the method uses link to entities to specify the column to sort by. What? It uses built-in stuff so that it's smart enough to know, I don't think I have it up here anymore, I don't, that it's smart enough to know, all right, to sort on the entire column by clicking the name of the column, all right? And it says if you didn't want to do it that way, all right, there's an alternative. Now, that's all fine, but unless you make, since we just changed the controller and actually made major changes to the controller, unless we come in and make pretty major changes to the index.cshtml file, nothing much is going to matter. It says replace the tr and th elements for the heading row with the highlighted code. So again, we'll have an action link here. If you remember at the top, it said create, okay? And this is what we have down here. So I want to grab this. And again, it says to come in here, whoops. Replace the tr and th elements for the heading row with this. And go down all the way to the for each, which is right there. All right. Now it looks like I've got the thing in there twice, which I probably do. So we'll get rid of that one, and that should fix it. All right. Again, this code uses the information in ViewBank to set up the hyperlinks. Already told you that. Run the page, click the last name and the enrollment date to verify that it works. All right. All right, you can see how last name and enrollment date are both hyperlinked now. Bless you. If I click on last name, now it's in reverse alphabetic order. Click again. Enrollment date, bless you, works the same way. All right. And I didn't show it, but when it first came up, it looked like this. It was the default, which just said put it in order by last name. Right? All right. The reason that this is going to become important, just so you know, when we create the sports store application, all right, when we create that, tell you what, it's going to be ugly. the author hasn't done a lot of bootstrapping. I shouldn't say it's ugly, but on a 1 to 10, it's about a 3. All right? And I'm going to ask that you make some changes in it to pretty it up. When we do the one that I'm planning on doing as a class, it's going to be butt ugly. On a 1 to 10, it's going to be a 0. Why? Because I want you to take control of it, and hopefully I have 11 of these turned in, and each one looks different than the other. All right. So to add filtering, we'll add a text box and a submit button. As it says, the text box will allow us to enter a search string in the first name, for the first name or the last name fields. So in the controller, replace the index method, which is bad because that's what we just put in. All right. It says replace the index method. The following changes are highlighted. Well, let's just grab it. Notice there were about 17 lines in here originally. There are now about a dozen more. All right. This is the big thing we're adding really in here. If you look on the screen, this is telling it to check whatever we have entered into that text box. All right. And if it finds it, all right, bring that up. So again, the idea is I'm going to be able to put in a first name or a last name, and it's going to search through there, and it's going to find it. Now, we could modify this. We could put another or in here that would check, for example, for the enrollment date, but the author just didn't do that. All right. So again, the new stuff is what you see in here. I don't want to read to you, all right? But they do mention that it adds a where clause, which would be important, all right? Because if we put nothing in there, by default, it's not going to be filtering, okay? All right. So let's add the search box. So now we're going to have to go back in, and it says add the highlighted code immediately before the opening table tag to create a caption, all right, and a search. Okay, so right before the opening table tag. So I'm not going to grab that. I already know where that goes. So I want to go into the index.cs HTML file. There's my table. All right. So again, it said put it so that it goes right before that, which means add it here. All right. Run the page, enter a search string to see if indeed it works. It says, notice the URL doesn't contain the AN search string, which means that if you bookmark the page, yeah, you won't get it. Well, you already know that. So let's go into here. Let's do a file save all. I haven't saved in a bit, and let's run it. So what should be different is I should, underneath my create that's going to come up here in just a minute, I should have a label, and I should have a text box after it. And I know there's somebody in there named like it's Yi Lang. I mean, all the names are going to be there anyway. It seems silly to have a search box. No, darn it, I keep putting stuff in there twice. But it seems silly to have stuff in here when you can see everything. But the author's keeping it simple. All right, so if I want to come in here and I want to check for Yi. Okay, I didn't find anybody. I thought there was somebody with that in there. But isn't there an Alonzo? There it is, Meredith Alonso. All right? And you already know that by default, see if I can grab somebody else. So we had the Alonso. You seem to find it, bless you. I put Yi in there, not Lee. So let's try it again, and we'll put Yan in there. Y-A-N. Click search, and it brings Yan Lee up. The point is we can search either on first name or on last name. Now, what you've got is if I want to come in and just do an edit, I can quickly get to that record. All right, I can quickly get to the record, make my changes. All right, I've got create new in there twice, and it's going to drive me nuts. So, and here they are. That should get rid of one of them. Double check here. And that's gone now. All right. Okay. So, going fairly quickly in this one, we've added the search capability, we've added the sorting capability. So the one thing that's left is to be able to come in and add the paging. Now, look on the screen, please. Notice that to add paging, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a new get package. That's important because there's already a bunch of pre-written code. All right? Now, I don't know, my guess is what I'm about to tell you, one of you in the first semester asked me this or something similar. But I had one of the first-year students the other day, I was showing them how to do something and grab something from online. And their comment was, isn't that cheating? No. I mean, the advantage of using something that's in a NuGet package like this is that it's tried and tested. When people find mistakes with it, they'll let the authors know. All right? So let's install this, and it's paged. Let's try doing this one the other way, or at least I will. All right, so I'm going to go back to here, and I'm going to do a Tools, NuGet Package Manager, and I'm going to go to Manage NuGet Packages for Solution, the middle option. All right, get rid of this. And I'm going to go over to Browse, and in the Browse box here, I'm going to put in what I'm looking for. Page List MVC. All right. And it's interesting because when you look right here, notice there's two of them. Now, we want the one for MVC, but the point is, sometimes when you come in here, there are going to be two or more packages that are almost of the same name. Occasionally, even though you're not supposed to, it will be the same name. All right. But when you start looking, well, here, first of all, notice, so this was non-MVC, so this is probably for web forms. But there's 3.42 million downloads, and this is for MVC, and there's 2.8 million downloads. All right? So in other words, they're both pretty good. But when you start looking at some of these, because I've seen them already, 0.5K, that means not too many people have used it. And the reason that that's important is it may be tried, it may not be totally tested. All right? The other thing is the same guy wrote both, so we should be fine. So I'm going to choose this. I'm just going to grab it for the entire project and click Install. We could have done it from the command line also. I don't know if they gave you the name or not, but just to spice it up, whatever you want to say a little bit, okay? So it should be in there now. Everything should be cool. All right. So they tell you how you can do this. Oh, there was the install line. So we could have done it from here also. All right. Now, I didn't do this, but look, when you add a new package, you should always build or rebuild the project. So come in here, just do a build solution. All right, literally it should take a matter of seconds when you do that. All right, and a lot of times what will happen is your button here will look grayed out. It won't be green anymore, but I've already had it happen where it's like that. Now, as you'd probably guess, if you've got a complex package that's maybe 10 times the size of ours and you rebuild it, it's going to take a little longer. All right, so we want to go back into our controller, and the first thing we want to do is we want to add a using statement. By putting this using statement in here, all right, by putting that in, what we're doing is we're saying we want to make that what's in that NuGet package available to our program. So I'm going to go back to the controller. I'm sure you already know this. They didn't show it in here, but I'm putting it at the top. And I'm putting it at the top because my stuff, well, I guess except for these could really go on the top. The advantage of putting stuff in alphabetic order is it makes it much easier when you're searching for things. That's all. All right? Replace the index method with the following code. So again, let's talk about what's going to change in here. All right, let me grab all of it, but I want to go over the new parts. All right. Nothing new here, nothing new here. This is new. If search string not equal to null, page equal 1. What that means is when you first start when you first run the package, or let's say with products in here, I don't have this, but let's say with products, we also wanted to let you sort by product type. All right? If you're jumping from one product type to another or whatever, or you're just starting, we're assuming you want to be on the first page. That's all. Okay? Otherwise, it says search string equal current filter. All right? So in other words, if I'm on page 2 and I click next page, I want it to go to page 3. Should make sense. All right? So what we're doing in here, if you look on the screen, is we're saying the page size by default for us is going to be 3. If you don't like that, you can change it. When we write the one that we're writing in class, which is probably going to be, unless I change my mind, I don't think I am, for a mythical bike shop, we will have 40 products. All right, again, if you say 40 products, if I want to show all of them at one time, 4 per page. And I could do it in 10 pages. Yeah, you could. 5 per page. I could do it in 8 pages. Otherwise, if I do 6 per page, there'll be 6 pages of 6 and 1 page with 4. All right? None of that should surprise anybody. All right, so again, we're going back in our controller, back to our index method, and again, making changes so we can add the page size. One thing to notice, as they say right here, look, this stuff was all in here before. The sort order was in here before. The current filter was in here before. This is new. Sorry, this is new. It's going to be whatever page. So do you have to supply to the person what page you are currently on? So again, if you're on page 3 and you click the next page button, you want to jump to 4. If you're on page 3 and you click the previous page button, you want to jump back to 2. All right? As it says, the first time the page is displayed, or if you haven't clicked any paging, everything is null. Once you do click on it, it'll change. All right. Again, they're using a viewBag property. I don't believe that the author in the sports store will use viewBag much at all. But there's going to be a lot of stuff that he does in there that you probably won't like. I know there was a lot of stuff I didn't like. So he says here, another property, current filter, provides the view with the current filter string. That must be included in the paging links in order to maintain. So not only, all right, if I've got something that looks like this, let's pretty this up a little bit. But if this says 1, 2, 3, and I've got a thing here to go forward, and I've got a thing here to go backwards, all right? That's the kind of thing that we're going to want. And actually, we're on 1. We probably might not even see 1 to go backwards, all right? But the author says if the search string is changed during paging, the page has to be reset to 1. All right. I already mentioned this to you. This is checking exactly what we just said. All right. Now this, if you look on the screen, where it says int page size equal 3, a lot of books recommend that be put in there as a constant. All right. Not only that, true or false, the answer is true, but true or false, you could actually make it a drop down and you could ask the user how many they wanted to see per page. You could do that if you wanted to. All right, be more work, but you could. All right, so we've made the changes to the controller, which again is going to necessitate changes to the .cshtml file. So it says here the changes are highlighted. Well, we want to make these two. All right. So this is a first when you look at this. We've got 2 model statements, all right, and mine will have to change. This will have to be ContosoCF. All right, which should, I think, fix that. And using page list, it says this directive is unnecessary. Well, let's see. I should read before I do. All right. I think we can remove the one that was there and replace it with this one. That may be what that problem is. Okay. And what is it telling me? Well, these might be errors that go away. They might not. We'll see in just a minute. All right. So, looks like we're rewriting a lot in here. So again, let me copy it over where we can see all of it at once and take a quick look at what's in here. All right. All right. Now, it's got in here href equals this. I don't think we built this. I don't think there is by default. There's not a page list. This is the thing where we're going to basically add the CSS to pretty it up, I believe. All right. So we're putting this near the top, called students again. Let's see. So right away, we're going to have that create new. That's not new. Then we're going to have our form. All right. And ideally, if we have set this up correctly, all right, we'll see. like that, but we'll take a quick look. Using table class equal table. Does everybody realize, looking at this line here that's in gray, all right, what is that doing? That's calling the bootstrap table class. All right, that's what that line is doing. So by default, what you get is your titles are going to automatically be bolded and aligned, and you'll get like a faint line between each record that's in there. It's meant to make it look a little nicer. You may or may not agree with that. All right, so the model statement at the top specifies that the view now gets a paged list object instead of a list object. The using statement gives access to that MVC helper for what we just added. All right, it says the code uses an overload of begin form that allows it to specify the form.get right there. All right, the default submits the data with a post, which means that the parameters are passed in the HTTP header, not in the URL. We've already talked about that. All right. Some initialization stuff that's done. They run through it again in more breadth and depth of coverage than I'm doing. I understand that. So I'm going to do a save here. I'm hoping I don't get an error because that's green. I don't like that, but I think that's just a warning anyway. So. You'll know real quick when you look on here we should only have 3 records and we should have paging at the bottom. Alright, it doesn't like something. It says the for each block is missing, so it looks like I'm missing a curly brace for my for each. Let's look at that. There's the beginning of the for each. Yep, and I am. There's the end of the for each. Beginning of the table, and I don't see any end for the table. That might be why I'm getting that error. All right, so taking that, that got rid of that error that I had there. Hopefully that was everything. Run it again. Okay, countered end table with no start tag. Yeah, it had a start tag. Were your tags properly balanced? Okay, this is the problem I run into when I do this in front of you like this. Something's screwed up. Here's the beginning. Okay. Okay, that looks good. Countered ending with no matching start tag. Well, that's right here. Okay, that's the problem. Okay, I put the table tag after or before the curly brace. It should have come after the curly brace. That should fix it. All right. Well, I don't see our stuff yet. That's not good. Good news is nothing broke, so that's working. And we haven't put in our CSS. Maybe that's why, but we'll see right now. All right. So let's see. Click the paging links in different sort orders to make sure paging works. Well, that didn't. All right. So I'll have to take a look at that during our next break. All right. Maybe they did say up here where you're supposed to put the pager.css file. But again, I don't think we have one. It would be in our content. There is one, pagelist.css. I guess we got that by default.
You're supposed to want to look after the table.
Okay. All right, thank you. Ah, that probably would help, huh? Okay, let's try to put those in. See what we've got. Yeah, considering they're all using the page count, that does sound like it'd be pretty important. All right. Copy. After the table. Okay. All right, now let's try it. Yep, that looks better. Thank you, Grace, for pulling my butt out of the fire. So there's page 2. There's page 3. Notice we don't have a next page because there isn't any. And when we go to page 1, we don't have a previous page. All right, plus again, notice we've got the lines now that are in here in the table. They might have been in there before. It's not really that big a thing. But we did in here, this looks a lot nicer than it would have, like I showed you, as opposed to a 1, 2, 3 in there. All right. Again, the author goes into much more depth and breadth of coverage than I am. You can take a look yourselves in there. All right. Might be a little early. Let's see. And not that early. But it is 2:42, so let's come back, please, at 2:55. We'll finish this up. We don't have much to go on this section, about 4 or 5 pages. We'll do that, and then I want to quickly talk to you about, like I said, about command interception and connection resiliency. That won't take long at all, just about 5 or 10 minutes. And then we'll talk about what we'll do at the beginning of the period tomorrow. I'm going to see if I can get this project done and port it up to the internet, both using Azure and using App Harbor. All right, at least one of them, and hopefully, in an ideal world, both. All right, so let's, like I said, 2:55, please.